Welcome to the community outreach meeting for Olive Drive Pole Line Road and Bike Ped Ramp Connection. This is a City of Davis capital improvement project numbered 8313, and it's being run by the engineering department in Public Works. And tonight we'll be talking about the structure from which you see a nice rendering right there. There's another component, striping and intersection improvements called the WBAR improvements. And we'll talk about that a little later. So yeah, I think we can go to the next slide, Jennifer.
Great. So tonight we'll start out with Michael giving a presentation and Luke, I assume. And then from there, we're going to go into public comments and questions. So once we get into public comments and questions, if you have something to say, please raise your hand. And if you're on the phone, you could push *9, and that'll let me know that you were interested in speaking. And if you have a question afterwards, please email Michael, and his email is on the bottom of the slide. It's mmitchell@cityofdavis.org. That's it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Here's the brief agenda. We're going to go over the main project overview. We invited Luke Fuson from Wood Rogers, who was the main engineer on the project. And I'll also talk about how a good portion of the project is federally funded. Then we'll go over the project schedule and how it will impact all three forms of traffic, vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrians. We'll talk briefly about the project description and the construction process. And at the end, we'll announce the Davis team and a slide of contacts that you can use to talk to people if you have questions. Okay. So the main item of this project is the pedestrian-bicycle bridge. On the next slide, there's a plan view of it. What it does is connects the east end of Olive Drive at that little loop there. It goes between I-80 and the railroad and starts at ground level and goes up in one ramp, no switchbacks, up to the Pole Line Road Overcrossing at the top. It's two-way and it's a multi-use path. It's made of cast in place reinforced concrete and a box girder bridge design, which are good strength to weight ratios. Luke will go over that, I'm sure. It's about 14 feet wide and a total of 408 feet long. And the slope is roughly 8%. There will be supporting columns for the bridge, which will have piles that will go down to 60 or 80 feet. And they're approximately 6 by 6 feet square. The next bullet is just FYI that next door is a Lincoln 40 housing development, which started in October 7th of 2019 and should be completed by late summer. And I'll go over when this project is going to start and end in a little while. The second component, which costs much less, is the walk bike audit report. Striping. There was a report done several years ago for the different routes to schools, and it was called the WBAR or WBAR. And there's one for Montgomery. And this project seeks to alleviate some of the comments in those that in the audit. Okay. Like I said, here's the plan view. I don't know if a lot of you guys have experience reading plans. I'll just outline that the two lower stripes are I-80, the top one being I-80 West, and the bottom one being I-80 East with a median. Then you can see the Olive Drive turnaround there on the left and the I-80 exit to Olive. Then you'll see a small stripe with green at the top and bottom. That's the structure we're talking about. It'll start on the left and go up to the right to the Pole Line Overcrossing, which runs top to bottom on this picture. Then you see the railroad tracks. So you see it's between the freeway and the railroad tracks in a small little space. Okay. This project did receive considerable grant money from the federal government. And down below there on the third bullet, you can see it was about $3.5 million to pay for the bridge and then the striping. It's all in one project. The W-bar construction costs about $500,000. And you can see the pedestrian bicycle bridge is roughly $4.25 million with a total construction cost of $4.753 million. If you add in engineering costs, construction management and inspection costs, and other non-construction costs, it runs up to $6.6 million total. Like I said, oops, not yet. Like I said, the federal grant is $3.5 million. The rest of the funds are general funds, about $500,000. Construction tax, $710,000. And road development impact fees of $1.9 million. Okay. This is a small project schedule, just shows you some milestone dates. I don't know if anyone was here to the first meeting, but it took place in October of 2019. It took a while to get Caltrans approval to bid the job out. You have to get their approval for the federal funding. That was done in December of 2020. And we bid about a month later in January 2021. It was awarded by City Council at their February 2nd, 2021 meeting. Today we're having the second outreach community meeting. Now, we've already had our pre-construction meeting with the contractor, who is Gordon N. Ball out of the Bay Area. And we've already sent them a notice to proceed, which means you need to start now because the city is going to start counting days. The way it works is we give them working days, in this case, 180 working days, which means holidays don't count and weekends don't count. 180 working days from March 22nd is roughly December 8th, 2021. So if they're not done by December, early December, let's say, they have to pay some liquidated damages to the city. I think this case is like $4,500 a calendar day. So unless they have some reason, some good reason that they've talked about with us for delays, then they'll have to start paying liquidated damages. So it's a pretty big deal. Let's see, this is a sort of reiteration of what we just talked about. The start of construction, March 22nd. Doesn't mean they're going to be on site with bulldozers and whatnot. That just means the city starts counting days. They may not be on site. They may be behind the scenes with submittal reviews and getting equipment in order and all that. For the second bullet, I want to talk about how they're going to need to close the Olive Drive exit starting March 29th, which is pretty soon, and go for the duration of the project, again, the end of October or the beginning of November. So Luke will go over Detours, but the reason is because there's not much room, as you saw in the plan. There's not much room for workers and vehicles, and Caltrans has rules about the distance from work areas to traveled lanes, and there's just not enough room in there to do what they need to do. So they've requested a closure, and so far we don't see much resistance from Caltrans. So we'll know more in a few days, but we think it's going to happen. Again, the project scheduled end date will be late October to early December, November sometime. It's not exactly known yet, but if you count the 180 days, it goes to early December. Okay. I wanted to show you this because you can't read it, but it's the actual schedule first submittal from the contractor to show you that it's a fairly complex job. The things in red are the critical items, means if they slip, the whole project slip. I don't know how many tasks there are, but there's 2 pages. You can show the second page there. The green tasks in the lower middle are the WBAR tasks, and they're not on the critical path, but they wanted to do it in late spring, early summer to midsummer. So that's when it's shown right there. Okay. Now I'll turn it over to Luke Fujon, who's an engineer, the design engineer from Wood Rogers.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. This slide basically tries to break down the very complex 2-page schedule that Michael just showed into a few bullets, but just a general kind of overview of what the contractor is proposing for the construction process. Initially, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but one of the first things is that does sound like it's going to happen, as Michael mentioned, would be to close the Olive Drive off-ramp. At that time, they'll also be constructing a temporary a pedestrian-bicycle detour and closing the existing Olive Drive bike path. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but they are going to kind of clear out, create their work zone, if you will. After that's finished and some of the initial work's done, it's kind of a bottom up. It's a cast in place bridge, so it's kind of a bottom up construction process, if you will. So the first thing will be constructing the foundations. First major item of work, which is drilling the holes for the piles, constructing the actual columns that'll hold the superstructure, constructing the abutments, and basically building the foundation. Once that's finished, they'll erect the false work. Since it is cast in place, false work will be erected. So once those columns are built, they'll erect the wood and steel false work system so that they can eventually pour the concrete to do the cast in place superstructure. Once the false work's erected, there'll be where the connection happens between the new ramp structure to the existing pole line road overcrossing. Some of the existing bridge will have to be demoed, so some of the existing barrier will be removed, fencing, and kind of clearing the space for the connection for the new structure to be made to the existing structure. Once that's, and then when that happens, and I'll talk more about some of the detours again in a minute. But once that demolition starts happening on the Pole Line Road overcrossing, there will be some shifting of the existing kind of traveled way for pedestrians and bikes. So that's kind of when that is expected to begin. Then they'll pour the concrete for the superstructure to kind of finish off the main structure of the bridge, the new ramp structure. They'll construct the connection to the Pole Line Road overcrossing after that, which includes, the connection of two structures. So the seismic joint and various different things to make that connection, which is a bit of a process. It sounds like what the contractor is proposing is, while they're making that connection between the two structures, that's about when the reconstruction of the existing bike path below on a grade will occur. That section of bike path within the limits of the ramp structure, basically between Pole Line Road and Olive Drive, is going to be reconstructed with new concrete, due to the fact that it has some cracking and some root damage, and it's just not in the best shape anymore. So that section is going to be replaced with new concrete path to make everything within the limits brand new. Once all those things are basically finished up, then it's kind of your finishing work, which is reconstructing barriers, installing the lighting, hand railing, fencing, and some of the final touches, striping and things like that. And then as soon as possible, I'd imagine the contractor, once the finishing work is good and everything's safe, to reopen the project. There will be the closures will be removed, and it'll be the opening of the project. This is an overview of the striping and signage plan for the new structure. I know it's a little bit difficult to read. I think the point here is that the new structure and the reconstructed bike path below within the project limits will all be upgraded to current standards for signage, bike signage, bicycle striping, pedestrian striping, and signage. You can see down the detail below is your green background bicycle bike legend that you see around. And so this project will have those. It'll have, you know, stop signs in the appropriate places. For example, if you're coming down the new ramp structure from Pole Line Road towards Olive Drive, you'll be going down downgrade, so downhill. So, you know, they'll have the through traffic on the flat portion down on the ground will have a stop sign and warnings for, you know, where that intersection comes together. So all kind of modern, up to standard signing and striping for bicycles and pedestrians on this project. So there will be some construction impacts to the public. I want to touch on those. I'll talk in detail about the detours and closures for both vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians. Probably during construction, the two things that could be noticed are noise and dust during construction. There are provisions in the specifications to address these. For example, the project has working hours of 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. on Monday through Friday. So this gives the contractor the hours to work, but also kind of limits the activity to those daytime hours where it's not as disruptive as it would be in the evening. There'll be provisions for dust, such as using water and things like that to not disrupt the area too much. But I guess you can go to the next slide, and we'll talk about the detours and road closures. So as Michael mentioned, the contractor does have the option, and we've worked with Caltrans on this process to close the Olive Drive off ramp. And the reason is that area is needed both for actually a bicycle and pedestrian detour, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also the structure is, you know, tall. I think the Pole Line Road Overcrossing is about 33 feet or so above the ground below. And so to build those columns for the structure, they're going to have a large crane on site, and just need enough space to get the cranes in and have their work areas set and kind of their lay down areas set to build those columns and the rest of the project for that matter. So they do have the option to close the off ramp throughout the duration of the project. So during that time, there will be signage along the freeway directing traffic to use the Richards Boulevard exit, and it'll have you know advanced warning there'll likely be CHP on site during that process, and so everybody will have fair warning. If you wanted to get to the end of Olive Drive, you would take the Richards Boulevard, turn right, and go down Olive Drive. So at certain portions of the project, and likely for most of the project, the existing bike trail needs to be closed. And so when the existing path is closed for construction, and that the off ramp is closed, there'll actually be space made available on the off ramp for bicycles and pedestrians to actually use the closed off ramp as their detour. And the way they'll get back onto the path, there's a little kind of diagonal hatch on the right of the screen there. There'll be a temporary bicycle and pedestrian path that's constructed between the off ramp back to the existing bike path. So if you're traveling west to east, you're on the off ramp. Once you're past the construction zone, there'll be a temporary path for you to get back onto the trail and continue on. When the off ramp is closed, the contractor will place temporary concrete rail along the edge of I-80, so that no vehicles will be able to make a mistake and accidentally try to exit the freeway and onto the Olive Drive off ramp. So it'll be completely separated from the freeway with concrete barriers. The other detour I wanted to speak about is up on the actual pole line overcrossing itself. So the way it's going to work is there's going to be a fair amount of work on the existing, I guess it would be the west edge of the overcrossing. There's the separated path that's available for two-way traffic on the edge of the overcrossing that bikes and pedestrians currently use. That needs to be closed when the connection with the new structure is made to the overcrossing. Pedestrians traveling either northbound or southbound on the overcrossing will still be able to travel on that side of the bridge. And the way that'll happen is they'll construct a temporary pedestrian path that will actually utilize the shoulder of the existing overcrossing. And again, similarly to the closure of the ramp we just talked about, that pedestrian path will be separated from traffic using temporary concrete barriers. So pedestrians really won't have that much of a detour, other than having to use a little bit of a temporary situation. That's not exactly a sidewalk, but it meets all the requirements that they would need. For bicycles, it's a little bit different. Bicycles will no longer be able to travel from south to north on the Pole Line overcrossing. That would be the west side or left if you're going in that direction. Just to the fact that that temporary sidewalk for the pedestrian is not wide enough to accommodate both bikes and pedestrians. So if you're traveling from southbound to northbound, you'll be directed to cross Pole Line Road and use what would be the east side of the overcrossing. And I know that I'm saying a lot of things, but basically, if you're going from south to north, you have to go on the opposite side of where that current wide pathway is. If you're going south, if you're going from northbound to southbound, you will still be able to stay on the west side of the overcrossing, but you won't be able to use a barrier separated pathway. If you want to go from north to south on the Pole Line overcrossing, there will be share the road signs. So bicyclists will need to share the road with vehicles in that situation. There are a series of kind of local paths in the area. So if you were going from north to south and you didn't need to get all the way over the freeway using Pole Line Road, you could use those local paths to get down to 2nd Street. Okay, I think that's it, and I'll pass it back to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. What's happening here is showing the overall plan of the second component of the project. That is the W-bar striping. You can see the dashed lines indicate some work areas. Different things are happening in different work areas, but overall, some intersections are receiving bulb outs, which, as you may know, sort of they do bulb out from the corners and give pedestrians a shorter travel trip from exposing themselves in the street. So that happens at Lillard and Drummond up in the upper right-hand corner. There are some bike paths that are shown that have wayfinding signs. It'll be restriped to go with the new street standards. And yeah, that's about it. I can go over different parts of this. If anyone has questions, I do have the drawings ready to show. Otherwise, I was going to just talk about it in general like this and sort of leave it at that for this venture. Again, they will start this in late spring and go through summer. There'll be some concrete work, there'll be striping work, and there will be a slurry seal at the end prior to striping. So some concrete work, some ramps, slurry, bulb outs, and then striping. Thank you. So our City of Davis team, the Director of Public Works is Bob Clark. He has oversight over this project and all projects in the city. The city engineer is Diana Jensen, who's my boss. And below that is me, the project engineer. There's also Luis Hernandez, who's also here. He's an assistant engineer helping as needed, and he's been a huge help so far. In communications, I'll start from the bottom there, is Barbara Archer. She's here. She's a communications and outreach manager, and her boss is Diane Perro. Not sure what her involvement will be, but in case there's some high-level decision that needs to be made, she'll get involved from that. On the consultant side, design consultants, Wood Rogers and Associate. Luke is the project manager, and his boss is Pete Tobia. I think I got that right. He does the QA/QC for any decisions made on Wood Rogers' side. We have hired a construction manager in Somas. They'll do CM and inspection. So they'll be on site daily, working with the contractor to make sure they're on schedule, doing things according to the plans and the city standards and that sort of thing. Dan Albright is the construction manager for Somas. Nick Liang is the inspector for Somas. The contractor, as I mentioned, is Gordon N. Ball, Inc. They seem pretty good. Okay. This last slide shows the contact information. This project is on the website in pretty good detail. It has all the spec and plans. It has the history. It has the nice rendering that was shown in the first slide. So feel free to take a picture of this slide, or maybe we can hand it out to people who ask, and you can go read all you care to. And then the phone number, our general phone number for Public Works, Engineering, and Transportation Department. It's got my phone number and email. It's got Dan, the Somas construction manager, his email and phone number, and it's got Barbara's email. That's the presentation, and now we can go, if there's any comments or questions, I'll let Jennifer go over these housekeeping things first.
Great. So I'm going to open up the floor to questions or comments. I see that we have one person so far who would like to speak. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand, or if you're on the phone, press *9. And just as a reminder, you can always email Michael if you have something to say. All right. So I'm going to open the floor up to Todd. You have the floor.
Hi. Okay. First of all, it's really welcome that this connector will be built, and I'm happy that I know it took a lot of work just to get to this point. I was on the BTSC when it was, when we saw it, and we pushed for what ended up being the final, configuration. And one thing I've actually noted is that there's going to be a lot of new connectivity for people in East Davis, for example, like 5th Sterling. to get to campus with just going through just two intersections, which is be a great benefit for them. Though I know the primary purpose was to to get kids to school in South Davis. On the other hand, I'm extremely troubled by a couple things. Um, First of all of the street itself, west of the project limits, has a deficient bike lane widths, and including in front of the what was Lincoln 40 now has been called Ryder Apartments. The agreement was to construct the paths quite below standard in the sidewalk, and that can be really difficult to change unless parking is moved. So in some, you have a great new connection for kids, going from Olive to Pole Line, but the street itself is going to be dangerous. And until, of course, the Olive exit is closed permanently. Okay, so number two, I do appreciate the detour that's being set up on the old 40 path, so that can remain open. I think that's a really good thing. And I see why that's going to be closed temporarily. And I appreciate that even with that closure as a ramp, that the bike paths can be kept open. However, I'm really troubled by the pole line. Detours. The pole line is kind of the biggest hill in Davis, and it's really difficult to ride with traffic on a bike for most people, except they're on e-bikes or they're really really fast cyclists. And by asking all people on bikes to share roads with traffic, share the pole line with traffic is a disaster waiting to happen. So looking at pole line, what we see, of course, is it's one way in both directions for vehicle traffic, but there's they're quite wide lanes, way above Davis standards for traffic lanes, and then there's just a painted Class 2 bike lane. So what I suggest is that rather than the barrier be put between the sidewalk and the traffic lane on southbound pole line, that it be moved roughly around the area where the bike lane marking is, or to make the street narrower, so bikes do not have to share that way with motor vehicles. And similar on the northbound pole line, the east side of the bridge, similar barriers should be placed, ideally permanently, but at least temporarily, on the same location to stripe to I'm sorry, make the new make the bike lane as wide as possible, but certainly would be reasonable to make the traffic lane 11 feet, which is the Davis standard. This is going to be a really big challenge if those things are not implemented. I can't think of another alternative. It's going to be really, really difficult for people to cross really this area by bike for however long the closure is planned. Even if it's just temporary, I realize that that's not as bad, but we really need to protect the bikes here. Right now, it looks like there's nothing that's going to affect the vehicles at all, and the bikes are going to have to be travel's going to have to be compromised, and that's not the way we should do it in Davis, and it's against City of Davis policy, the transportation element of the general plan. And going in the future, something to think about is that my understanding, this is the last thing I'll say, and thank you for listening to this long comment, is that my understanding is that when the Richards 80 is reconstructed, is that all the traffic will be detoured onto Olive Drive, and that's going to be a problem because it'll be intersecting all the kids going to school in South Davis, and also people from that area and from East Davis headed towards campus, with just a painted line to protect them. Thanks.
Thank you.
I can say we could look into that idea of repurposing the lanes going up the hill, maybe put some, so bikes could have their own sort of temporary lane there going up. I don't know if it'll work, the dimensions, but we can definitely look into that.
Great. Okay. The next person to speak is Brannon O'Connor.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, my first question is on the construction costs. You got a $4.7 million direct construction cost and a 6.6 non-direct construction cost. You know, could you give me more of a breakdown of the over 140% of the direct construction cost? It seems a little high.
Michael, would it be helpful to move to that slide?
Yeah, but I can probably find the staff report that lays it all out.
Okay.
If I get a minute here.
Sure.
Well, while you're working on that, I got another question. You know, with the unemployment level in Yolo County and Gordon Ball being a Bay Area contractor, what efforts has been made to hire local?
I can answer that. So it's a competitive bid, as you know. It takes quite a large company to float the insurance and surety requirements. I don't know if the Bay Area, not if Yolo County would have that sort of company, and it's low bid. It's by public contract code. So if anyone comes in with a low bid and they have a valid contractor's license that doesn't have marks against them, and there's no challenges, we're sort of required by the public contract code to award the project to the low bidder.
Okay, great. So we have no local preference. Sometimes, like with SMUD, they'll give a discount to hiring local.
Yeah. So if we were looking at it for a consultant, which doesn't have to be based on low cost, we do try to give preferences to Yolo County consulting, like design consultants or any kind of services. We can put a point in our tallying that local, okay, they get an extra point for that. But that's just consultants. They're not bound by the public contract code.
That's the 140% of the direct construction cost.
No, that was to answer your question about local firms versus.
But the consultants are the ones that are driving up the construction cost, the overall total cost of ownership to the public. Okay, moving on. With the proximity of the Toad Hollow Dog Park, has the park been notified of this drilling operation? And have we done our due diligence to protect the toads?
I know there was an environmental document. I don't know offhand about protecting the toads. I'd have to look into that. There was a environmental document done. And Jennifer, if I can share my screen, I'll bring up the soft costs.
Let's see. Did you try to share it? Oh,
Just up, yeah. There we go. This is from the that report that the city council awarded. You can see the design costs there, first row, staff labor costs to support the design effort, the contract. We always have about anywhere from 8 to 10 to 15% contingency for unknown work scope as the project moves along. We're required to put, is it 1% of construction costs into our municipal arts fund. This is an estimate for materials testing for concrete and soil, steel and other items. And then there's the construction management and inspection costs at Selmas of $500,000.
Okay.
And staff support there, and there's your 6.6.
Okay, so I misread that slide. I thought it was 4.7 for the direct construction costs and an additional 6.6 in soft costs. So
I see. I'm sorry.
I misinterpreted that. This seems much more in line. I had a hard time with the soft costs being 140% construction costs. Sorry, Michael.
That's okay. Thanks.
Thanks. All right. Al Miller, you have the floor. Al, we can't hear you.
Do you hear me?
Yes, now we hear you.
Okay. For some reason, all of a sudden the screen went blank when you called me.
Oh.
Hello, Michael.
Hey.
I was at the, let's just ask question first. Okay. So I guess the question is, can you change this? But I have to explain in my comment what this is. So I went to the first public comment on this and made a suggestion, and I see that it was not incorporated. And when I made the suggestion, I sort of got the feeling that it was not understood. So I'm going to make it again, and it doesn't involve like moving pilings or anything. It's just a ground suggestion at the intersection. And let me first say once again, thank you for building a straight ramp and not a back and forth. That makes this just 100% better than the first drawing. So my suggestion, could you bring the plan up?
Sure.
Can you, like the overview plan?
This one. Oh, sorry. I forgot I wasn't sharing my screen. Hold on. I see it. All right.
Yeah, that's the one. So my suggestion is that at the point where the two bike, the old highway, yeah, right there, where they come together, so just slightly to the left, to leave just as it is what you're building and the and the connection to Olive Drive. But let's say you're going west on the highway, the old highway bike path, and yes, exactly. And you're coming west, and right there where you come in, instead of just coming in at that, sort of oblique angle where you have to like look over your shoulder to see if someone's coming down the ramp before you merge, to actually swing slightly towards the railroad track and then make like a counterclockwise loop so that you hit the new bike path at a 90-degree angle. So you just sort of put a hook in there at the end. And that way, there'll be less people coming up the path from Sacramento. And that way, when they come up to it, they'll be at a 90-degree angle and can see people coming down the ramp. And if somebody is, say, going eastbound and wants to get over exactly to the old highway, then they'll have people coming at them, but instead of like, you know, somebody's coming down real fast and you're kind of like, ooh, should I go over or go to the left or whatever, you know, you would just stop and wait for them and then go over. And I think it makes for a safer intersection. And the only change that would have to be made is just, you know, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 feet of pavement going out and changing the signage and the striping a little bit. So I don't think it would add significantly to the cost. And I think it would make for a safer intersection.
We definitely can look into that. I'm sorry I wasn't at the first meeting. I can't say it's a bad idea. We can definitely talk internally and see what that would entail. The project is awarded. Any slight change now at contract change order prices. Plus, I'm concerned about if you sweep to the north, it's pretty close to the railroad right away.
Mhm.
And I'm concerned about going into the railroad right away, and UP would be more concerned about that.
Yeah, and Michael, I can maybe touch
Okay.
on this one just a bit. I was at that first meeting, and we did take the comment into consideration, and actually widened it a little bit since the last time the plan was shown. But you're exactly right. The more we push the path and widen it towards the railroad tracks, not only is there the railroad right of way that we're pushing up against, there's also a pretty substantial drainage ditch that runs along there as well. So the more you push that pavement towards the tracks, the more you're impacting that existing drainage ditch and the trees as well. So we pushed it out. We pushed it out a little bit, not enough to make a 90-degree angle, as was mentioned, but we tried to basically maximize the amount we pushed it towards the tracks without getting into the drainage ditch and the railroad right away.
Thanks.
Okay, I understand the issue. Possibly if that, you know, if there was just where it just basically stopped instead of looping. I mean, I don't think the loop is really necessary to do this. And then, you know, people would just have to, you know, say there'd be just a fence there at the end, and then people would just have to turn their bike, and it would still create the same effect. You'd be at a 90-degree angle before you went out. So it's much more of a it makes it so that you really have to stop and look before you just merge.
I don't think we, I see what you're saying. Having the bicycles that are going from east to west make a complete stop and then kind of turn back in, rather than having the merge.
Yeah, I mean, the more I think about it, you really don't have to bulb out, you know, in a big hook to do it. You can just pretty much have it come to an end rather than merge in more of a gentle Y. It's just that I think the potential for an accident is there if somebody merges and someone else is coming down. So I just think it would be safer.
Well, thank you for that comment, Al.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Todd, you have the floor again.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I was going to actually suggest that the problem with any stop signs on this ramp, well, first of all, I wouldn't refer to them as modern, but they're just going to be ignored. And if a stop sign is put there, like at the bottom of the ramp for the less dominant form of bike ped traffic, it's just going to be ignored. And if it's just there for liability reasons, that's just kind of silly and cynical, really. So I definitely agree with what Alan said. Something to actually physically make the people on the level path slow down and be able to look over their shoulder would be a lot safer. What's stressful also is that the plan I know is that the Olive Drive off ramp is going to be eventually completely closed. So now we're unfortunately, using the what seems to be a much smaller space to construct this path than we could be. So then in a couple of years, assuming that everything happens with Richards 80, this ramp is going to be closed and going to be all the space that could have been used. I realize, of course, that if this whole thing was aligned, it would make a big, huge difference in plans and construction costs and everything with the piles. But it's just unfortunate. So I guess I just want that to be on the record. But yeah, something that basically things that are solved with designs to change speeds, whether it's motor vehicles or bikes, to create safety and to determine who gets priority is always going to work much better than just a stop sign that's going to additionally sometimes create another barrier, another problem if it's placed too close to the path, where it can actually be hit by a handlebar and so on. And I think that's it. Thanks again for listening to a second comment.
Thanks.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, Stephanie, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I hope this isn't a silly question. I live on Farragut Circle near the spot that you're doing some of the striping near Montgomery. And I would love to see some images of what you were talking about. Could you just give me some like general Google terms of what I could search to see like what it is that you're actually putting in right there?
Oh, Michael, you're on mute, but I think Michael's trying to say that he's going to show you.
Well, I was going
Okay.
to go to the last slide, Jennifer.
Okay.
Then I said I liked your WandaVision picture.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing. I gave you.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Sorry again. There you go.
The last one there that with the it has a link.
Oh, got it. That's what you meant.
Stephanie, if you go see that, if you could take a picture of that and browse to that webpage within the city website, it has more information than you could possibly want for both aspects of the project. It'll show you exactly what's happening at Farragut and elsewhere. And if you have questions, I could walk you through the drawings. If you're not familiar with engineering drawings, I'd be happy to walk through it. But that'll have rather than Googling terms, I think that would be the best way.
And Michael,
Okay.
this is Barbara. Can I interject?
Yeah.
On the cityofdavis.org homepage, we have a button on the right that says improvement projects. You
Okay.
click on the button and then you'll see an alphabetical list of projects that we're doing outreach for. And so you'll want to click Pole Line Olive Drive connection, and will take you to the same place as the link that we were showing on the slide.
Right.
And this is it.
And you can go, maybe Jennifer, you can scroll way down to the very bottom and it'll have the W bar drawings.
Is this it, Michael?
Yeah, Montgomery bike on it. And I think it's like 10 or 20 sheets. It goes through work area by work area, showing all the improvements.
And if it's the Farragut at Lillard Drive, that'd be page 10.
Thank you, Luke.
Okay.
There you go.
What do you think, Stephanie?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I personally have requested repainting there many times. We cross that with our dogs multiple times a day. And I know they've installed there's a light with like the flashing lights, which helps a lot too. I was just trying to figure out if there was like additional things that were being added on top of that, or, but it looks like it's mainly just striping, correct?
There may be a ramp down there. Luke, do you know?
It's I believe it's adding the tactile domes onto the two ramps
Okay.
on the north side.
I think 3 of them. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and then on the south one, 3 is, yes, 3.
Oh, got it. And I think I know what you're talking about. Those are like those yellow, you
Right.
know, bumpy kind of pads. Yeah. Okay. Let's see now. Thank you so much for the clarification. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Sophie, you have the floor.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, hi. I live on Drummond and Albany Circle, which is just a little bit outside of the scope of the projected work. Although my children, I don't know if you want to pull out a map that shows that area. So this neighborhood, Albany Circle, also is linked to this newer development behind us that has several houses. And also there's some children that utilize that street, those that come from Mono and Coso neighborhood that would come right. So we're like that little lollipop street on your right. Albany Circle, that'll on the east side of Drummond Avenue.
Oh, over here.
Right. And so this neighborhood plus the newer development, the house in the back, plus Coso and Mono Street. So often you'll have a group of children all cycling in through Albany Circle and having to cross Drummond Avenue to reach the bike path that then goes south towards Montgomery. And so there's no crossing, there's no marking, and we've requested this intersection to become safer at many instances. And I was just curious to see if there was any thought that were made into, trying to either make this intersection safer to cross or to perhaps allow, because there's already like bike path markings on the streets to make them 2 ways. So then the student would come south on Drummond Avenue, but like up, somewhere that we can make that intersection safer. So as far as I know from the drawings that I saw, it didn't seem like the project extended all the way there. Am I correct?
Correct. And you said you talked to someone, Sophie, in the city about this?
Right. And it was perhaps a year or 2 ago when they were like reaching out to people around the neighborhood, asking if they thought that the path, if their path to the school were safe. And we were several neighbors, making those requests that this intersection was dangerous. Because you see how wide it is. And so the children that comes in from Albany Circle, they have to cross over to Drummond to then go south. And then there's no marking and there's nothing. So sometimes what we end up doing, see how wide it is? So sometimes what the children have sometimes do is going on the opposite side of Drummond, so on the east side of Drummond, and riding on the sidewalk as to not cross Drummond, but this then caused problem at the intersection on Littered Word.
Oh, Sophie, can I just chime in here?
Sure.
Why, I guess, what about using the pathway that's behind here where they can go from it? Why not?
Right, so then there's an overpass there that takes you underneath Drummond. That shoots you, there's no way to get back on Drummond. You have to kind of continue and loop back all the way to, so it adds like several miles. If you zoom out, you'll see like you would have to go all the way to where Halsey Circle is, and Playfields, and then go down that way. Because there's no way from here to get back on Albany.
I thought and I guess I'm just speaking out of turn here, but I thought there was a connection right here from Mono onto Albany Terrace. Is that not correct?
Right, so these people, yes, so yes, there is a connection there, or yes. It tells you not to use it, but you can actually come there. And then the problem is, are you referring to going underneath?
Yeah, I guess I'm referring to if you live here, going
Yeah.
through here and then getting onto the pathway and then going under Drummond.
Right, and then if you zoom out, once you're on the bike path,
Yep.
Like zoom out a lot.
Okay.
Once you're on the bike path, you're kind of tracked, and then you have to circle around, past on the green belt, all the way around.
And where are you trying to go to? The school?
To Montgomery, let's say.
Got it, over here.
That is over that. Instead of going, so the children just end up wanting to go down Drummond Avenue
All right.
to reach the school. And there's already some sort of bike path markings, but the center section is heavily used by, the children on that loop, but also Mono and Coso. And I've raised that concern several times.
No, that's a really good observation.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing. I don't know if we have like an answer to this tonight, but
Okay.
I'm definitely making a note of it. I run the bike and pedestrian program. And so there might be something that we could look into, but I don't know.
Okay.
But you're talking to the right people, so that's good.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you.
And,
you
um,
have something else?
hi, this is Barbara. I just wanted to, I could write down Sophie's information so we could get back to her with that answer. Or you could email me, Sophie, at barcher@cityofdavis.org, and then we can let you know after we've researched it.
That would be great. Thank you. I'll email you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Jennifer,
Yeah.
how many questions are in the queue?
Sophie was our last speaker unless somebody else is going to be raising their hand. So I'm not sure.
The reason I ask is I've been asked to go over in a little more detail the W-bar improvements.
Sure.
So,
You want me to go back to here?
yes.
Okay.
So you can just start at the beginning there and I'll walk us through it. Again, this shows the work areas for the different segments. You know, there's like there's 10 or 11 there. And then the next sheet is spec stuff. We need to go over that. The next sheet, can you expand it just a little?
Yeah.
Oh, no, this is just existing topography. We can skip the next 2 or 3.
Cool.
Existing topography, existing. Okay, so this is horizontal control. I don't think we need to go over that. There's more details later on in the grading plan. You can kind of see there, back up there a little bit, sorry. You can kind of see at Lillard and Drummond, thank you. The bulb outs there, that's the grading plan, and they will be have concrete installed. But this just shows the grading and the elevations for the final grading. But you can kind of see the bulb outs there. That's why I wanted to point it out. This is some concrete work at Lillard. And what's the cross street? I can't.
It's Danbury.
Danbury. This shows some ramps and some concrete work. No bulb outs. This is the same intersection with the bulb outs. This is the utility plan. Yeah, you'll see the same picture over and over for different aspects of the project. These are some details. This is what we just went over at Lillard and
Farragut.
Farragut. Thank you. The crosswalks and the ramps, truncated domes. This one,
Willard and Danbury.
Danbury crosswalks. There's some striping changes, truncated domes, and some concrete work. The stuff in bold is the improvements. Lillard and Drummond on the right. And what is it? Danbury on the left. So this is the section between those two intersections. And you see it's basically the restriping. You see the cross hatching for the buffers, for the bikes, between the bikes and the cars. This one, Lillard and Drummond. This again shows the bulb outs and the crosswalks, the new striping, new truncated domes, lots of striping for that one. This is, go down just a little second. I want to read the title. Yeah, Danbury Street improvements, striping. And this is just striping. There's, as we go down, there's some bicycle paths that show some wayfinding signs. You can scroll down.
Oh, cool. The wayfinding signs.
Wayfinding signs. Mm-hmm. And if you want to see where in the project that is, you just go to the first sheet. It'll tell you.
Michael, can I go ahead and can I add that this is Barbara again. When we've done projects around schools in the past, we work very closely with the school principal and use and message out to the families at that school. So they have almost a day-by-day expectation of what's going on, in addition to doing it on city social media channels. But we will definitely work very closely with the school. And then, as Jennifer mentioned, she's in charge of our bike and pedestrian program. So she's integral to that process too. So we make sure that all the students and parents approaching the school and also at pickup have easy access and exiting abilities.
Yeah, and I can add that when this is happening, our construction manager and inspector will be monitoring this throughout the day and looking out for any traffic problems with children and bicycle and pedestrians. I want to point out that we just got the schedule, that large schedule. It had so many tasks maybe 3 days ago, and we're reviewing it. So they'll be fine tuning that in the coming days. And by the time the striping gets here, yeah, we'll work with Barbara and Jennifer and our construction management team to sort of, you know, we've done this before, so we'll fine tune this as we go. Is that the last?
Let me see. Sorry. Yep, I believe that is it.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about what I just went over?
Brandon has his hand raised. So Brandon, go for it.
So are you guys going to do the concrete there in front of the school during the summer? It would make sense.
Yes,
Perfect.
that was easy.
Does anyone else have any questions about what Michael just went over or the project as a whole? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. So I just wanted to bring up, and I know I've discussed this with you all, I believe in the original audit report, one of the recommendations was to put a connection from the South Puta Bike Creek or the bike path to the back of the Royal Oaks area community. I don't know what that's called. So, and that, I don't know if that's made it in this or not. And I just wanted to kind of throw that back out on the radar because it was a really important equity piece of the original Walk Bike Audit Report. to provide that access as well. You know, it may not necessarily be part of this particular project, but it was an important part of the recommendations that came out of that report. So just want to keep it on the radar.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And I'm wondering if you could take the time tomorrow or Monday to shoot me an email.
Yeah, happily.
Because it was hard to follow what you were talking about.
Yeah, if you zoom back out on the map, I can point out where.
Which map? The Google map or?
Just the Google map.
Sorry, we had a dog emergency here.
It's okay.
Going to the Google map. Okay.
So if you, so let me orient myself, sorry. So if you go back to the rear of the school, of the rear of Montgomery.
Okay, we zoom out.
Yep. And then if you, so the bike path, if kids are taking the path, you know, that's south of Montgomery School,
Yep, right
riding
here.
along that exactly there. And then once you hit Walnut Park, if you then head south on Walnut Park,
Okay.
that takes you, so if you scroll down from there, it takes you to the bike path that runs along Pewter Creek, all the way down toward the
Down
bottom.
here. Yep. mhm.
And then that way. So one of the recommendations, if you just head a little bit further west, was was right where you are. So right where Emma Lane comes into the bike path. One of right around there. There is a wooden fence at the rear of that property that used to have a gate in it. And so part of it was grading that little tiny stretch between where your map says Emma Lane or Irma Lane and where your cursor is right now, so that there was actually an access directly to that neighborhood from the bike path, so that all those kids could get to school on the bike path, because currently there's no access there. And so they need to ride on the streets to get to the school. And there actually are quite a few students at Montgomery that live in that neighborhood.
Got it. So you're asking if the project can include this gate to allow for these students to get onto the pathway.
Well, so I just wanted to remind, because I think that it didn't get included in this project perhaps, but it was one of the original recommendations for Montgomery. So I just don't want it to fall off the radar completely. And yeah, I mean, if there is a way to include it, it's not a large project. It's basically putting a little pathway from, you know, basically where it says Emma Lane on the map right now, like just from the back of that neighborhood onto the bike path.
Mhm.
You know, it was costed out in the engineering report for that, and it wasn't very much money. It's just like literally a concrete path.
Yeah, we can get a quote from the contractor, whether it's part of this project or a different smaller project. I think it can be done, you know, fairly trivially, like you say.
Okay, great. That's all. Just wanted to keep it out on the
Yeah. Thanks for bringing
reefer.
that up.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to speak about or have any questions or comments before we call it a night? Michael, I'm seeing none.
If not, I want to thank everybody for coming. And we had some really great questions, really great interactions. And again, the notice to proceed, our next milestone is March 22nd. And you'll soon see some construction activity at the base of Pole Line Road there towards Olive Drive. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Drive home safely and ride your bike home safely, right? All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Luke.